Good morning. I'm Joanna Cronky, and I am a worship associate here at Horizon, as well as a member of the choir, and also the chair of the Horizon Pagans group, co-chair with Lori Willis. We are excited to welcome you to worship service this morning. We are so glad to have you with us today. Whether you're joining us in person or virtually, whether you're here for the first time or have visited many times and have been here longer than you can remember. Here at Horizon, we welcome people of all faiths and of no faiths in particular. Whoever you are, wherever you are on your journey, you are also welcome among us.
My name is Laura Wooten, and I am a co-chair of the Ministerial Search Committee. As you know, we've been in a search for a settled minister for about a year now, and the search committee has been working really hard to find the right minister for Horizon. While we had candidates, we have decided to enter into the second phase of the search because we did not find the match that you asked us to find in these surveys and the focus groups. This is a normal part of the process. Horizon is a desirable pulpit, and we have new candidates in this phase of the search. We are united in this decision and optimistic that we'll find a good match for Horizon. This will extend our timeline a little bit, so we'll be hoping to welcome a candidate in early June. And we thank you for your trust, and we'll be available after service in the sanctuary to answer questions that my fellow search committee members and I will be available. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I have one other piece of information to share. You may notice that we often pick up these little cards. These are if you want to share a joy or a sorrow with the whole congregation. Please come up early in our worship service, and you can write something on this card, place it in the bowl here, and we'll have it shared. So thank you. Our call to worship this morning comes from the writings of the Reverend Elizabeth Mount. And though these words are from 2020, and you will hear them as such, I think they provide interesting reflection material for today. In ancient times, they said, Dayenu. It would have been enough to have been spared after the plagues. It would have been enough to have been freed of slavery. It would have been enough to have had food in the desert. Now we question, when will it be enough again? Dayenu. Will it be enough to stay home? Will it be enough if we are deemed essential as we are made to work? Will it be enough to wear a mask as we go to the grocery, to the office, to the gas station? Will it be enough to keep us well in the midst of plague that has not passed over? Now we wonder, worry, wish for answers. Dayenu. It would have been enough. It will be enough again. If the story of Passover is told and teaches us how to live in this time, it will be enough. If the stories of our ancestors bring us hope for tomorrow, it will be enough. If we join together in remembering that we all come from people who have survived again and again, it will be enough this year as it is each and every year. Dayenu, it will be enough that we are together today. Come, let us worship together.
It is a time of year when many holy days converge at one time. Today, we acknowledge Palm Sunday, Ramadan, and Passover. In honor of Palm Sunday, the day where Jesus returned to the city to praise and shouts of hallelujah, only to be sent a few days later to his death, I offer these words from Reverend Gretchen Haley that bear witness to the common ways we are each called, in simple and sometimes bold and courageous ways, to walk forward into paths of struggle and loss. All you can do is walk into Jerusalem with the hosannas ringing in your ears and the palms coming at you in every direction. When you are already remembering the bitter of what comes next, even then, all you have, is the moving forward into the city and the call that says, you have been preparing for this your whole life. That every good thing will come undone does not make it all make-believe, and when the world turns upside down and lovers become strangers and thieves and betrayers turn out to be the beloved beside you in the dark, even when the palms turn to passion, even then, you can still throw your arms open wide and turn forgiveness over and over on your tongue until it just falls out and you find yourself empty of everything for a moment until the breath begins again, the rise and the fall, and the next morning comes, gloriously steady, with life. In this spirit of call, in the midst of chaos and faith, in the midst of fear, we light our chalice and begin our worship together. If you will all now stand in body or spirit and join us in the affirmation of our church. Love is the doctrine of our church. The quest for truth is its sacrament, and service is its prayer. To dwell together in peace, to seek knowledge in freedom, to serve humanity in harmony with the earth. Thus do we covenant together. We will now sing our opening hymn, number 188 in the gray hymnal, Come, Come, Whoever You Are.
So the title of our story today is called Raising Up What Is Worthy, and it's by Karen Johnston. And when we tell this story, we're going to talk a lot about too much. And when we talk about too much, we're going to picture like a scary monster. Can you guys do that? What does your scary monster look like? No, but it could be. So do you guys ever hear grown-ups complain that there's just too much? You guys hear that? I think I hear that a lot. Grown-ups, do you ever complain that there's just too much? No? Yes? Maybe? Too much this, too much that, too many emails, too many channels, too many brands to choose from, too many errands to run, too many things to do. Maybe that. Too many distractions taking our attention away from what's important. And sometimes it can be a good thing, right? A great thing to have an abundance of things if they're good. Abundance means having so much, usually in a good way. So like lots of ice cream choices, or lots of ways to be able to help a friend who might be sad. But sometimes too much is really just too much. And too much can really be so much that it can bury everything that's important in our lives. It can kind of hide it away from us, even ice cream, you know? So too much can make us forget to spend quality time with people that we love. The too much monster can keep us from knowing our own special gifts and giving them in ways that help the world. Too much can keep our minds and hearts so busy that we don't have time to pay attention. And so we come together here once a week to raise up what is worthy of our heart's attention, our mind's attention, our spirit's attention. We come together to worship. And that's what worship means. A lot of people ask me that, even grown-ups. What does it mean to worship? Worship means to raise up that which is worthy. I like to think of worship as setting aside time and making the too much stay away, maybe. In our case, we spend about an hour, and we tell the too much to stay away. We keep the monster away outside the building. And we can have time and space to pay attention to what's worthy of our heart's time and mind space and our spirit's attention. I think we all need this. We all need to set aside time away from the too much. And as a congregation, we do it in the form of worship on Sunday mornings. Some UU communities do it at the same time. Some do it other times. Other traditions do it on Sundays or Saturdays or Fridays. No matter the time, it's good for our hearts, minds, and spirits. Raising that which is worthy. Worship. I am glad that we do it together. It makes it that much better. So thank you, folks, for listening to my story today, and we'll now sing you all out to your classes.
Bunny will come up and explain the agency that we're working with today for our Share the Plate offering. Thank you.
Good morning. I'm Bunny Summerlin, and my pronouns are she and her, and I am abundantly happy to be with you all this morning. I am a happy member of the Ministerial Search Committee, and I am a happy member of the social justice program here at Horizon. And I'm very honored this morning to present to you the Share the Plate recipient for April, for all of April, is the Unitarian Universalist Service Committee. It's been supported by us for forever. And for new people, we're going to show a little video that will explain what the work of the service committee is. Since 1940, the UUSC has been advancing human rights internationally. So that is for all of April, you can make those donations. Thank you in advance for your continued support of this beloved initiative as we see this short video.
At UUSC, we seek to advance human rights, dismantle systems of oppression, and uphold the inherent dignity and worth of every human being.
Founded in 1940, UUSC addresses the needs of people who've been ignored or overlooked, working in places where the larger aid agencies often do not.
We are committed to building upon a legacy that is rooted in locally led initiatives, working hand in hand eye to eye and heart to heart with community leaders and grassroots organizations in the United States and around the world.
Today, UUSC has over 30,000 members, partnering with more than 40 grassroots organizations. Our programs span across 20 countries in Asia, the South Pacific, Central America, and the United States.
We do our work in 3 ways: through advocacy and action with UU congregations, UUSC members, and our incredible volunteers; through education and experiences with the UU College of Social Justice; and through grant-making, convenings, and collaborative research.
With our partners, we address human rights issues including disaster justice, emergency relief in the face of natural or human-made crises, climate action, working with communities who are losing their homes due to climate change, and criminalization, partnering with communities who are targeted simply for their activism or being who they are: immigrants, LGBTQ people, and ethnic and religious minorities.
And this past year, we have been working with our grassroots partners to meet the unique human rights challenges presented by the COVID-19 crisis.
We know that UUSC members expect us to always be learning and be bold in our programming and our commitment to human rights.
We want you to have confidence in our work. UUSC is a terrific investment for your philanthropic support. Our budget goes far to accomplish so much for human rights in the U.S. and around the world.
And for 10 years running, UUSC has earned 4 stars, the highest possible rating from Charity Navigator, because of our effectiveness and fiscal transparency.
It is an exciting time at UUSC. We are grateful to you and to all of our members for your partnership and for putting your faith in us. You make our work possible. Thank you.
Thank you, UUSC supporters.
Thank you for everything you do.
Thank you so much for your support.
And thank you for putting your faith in us.
For all that you do to advance human rights.
We really appreciate it.
We couldn't do the work we do around the world without you.
Thank you so much for your support.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Our first reading this morning comes from Exodus chapter 3, verses 1 through 11. One day, Moses was taking care of the sheep and goats of his father-in-law Jethro, the priest of Midian, and Moses decided to lead them across the desert to Sinai. There, an angel of the Lord appeared to him from a burning bush. Moses saw that the bush was on fire, but it was not burning up. "This is strange," he said to himself. "I'll go over and see why the bush isn't burning up." When the Lord saw Moses coming near, God called him by name from the bush and answered, "Here I am." And Moses answered, "Here I am." God replied, "Don't come any closer. Take off your sandals. The ground where you are standing is holy. I am the God who was worshipped by your ancestors, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob." Moses was afraid to look at God, and so hid his face. The Lord said, "I have seen how my people are suffering as slaves in Egypt, and I have heard them beg for my help because of the way they are mistreated. I feel sorry for them, and I have come down to rescue them from the Egyptians. I will bring my people out of Egypt into a country where there is a lot of good land, rich with milk and honey. My people have begged for my help, and I have seen how cruel the Egyptians are to them. Now go to the king. I'm sending you to lead my people out of his country." But Moses said, "Who am I to go to the king and lead your people out of Egypt?" Here ends the reading. We come now to the time in our worship service that we set aside for meditation and prayer. We'll have a time of shared silence, a spoken prayer, then we'll hear a musical response that is different this week from our choir. I invite you to join me now in a time of silence. Loving God, Spirit of life, mystery in which we live and move and have our being, draw near to us this morning and hear our prayers. This time of year is a time of convergence, where people of faith across traditions are gathered in ritual. It is Ramadan, and our Muslim friends and neighbors are engaged in a time of reflection, connection to those who are less fortunate, connection to God. Soon it will be Passover and then Easter, and Jews will tell the ancient story again of enslavement in Egypt and of liberation, and Christians will find hope for renewal in the story of the resurrection, where new life emerges despite all evidence otherwise. And still others among us hail the coming of spring, that sacred time when life seems to come back to the earth, signifying that the wheel of the year is ever turning. It has also been a week of sadness and of anger for many as we hear of yet another school shooting, and we cry out, as we have cried out before, when will we stop this insanity? It does not have to be this way. In spirit, we don't want to offer the same hollow, empty thoughts and prayers. Our prayers are different, for they are filled with rage, and our prayers are about change. Our prayers are that those in power will one day begin to care about the people they claim to represent. Our prayers are that one day they will be forced to love children more than money. We also send love and care to the many impacted by tornadoes around the country, that they may be safe and cared for and have support as they rebuild. And may we breathe through our own anxiety, knowing that this will likely continue as our climate changes. Spirit, hear our cries for justice and for change, and help guide our hands that we may one day make it so, that one day we will rise up together and say, no more. May it be so. Amen.
Humbly hearted, rise. Won't be divided, rise. With the Spirit to guide us, rise. In hope, in prayer, we find ourselves here. In hope, in prayer, we're right here. In hope, in prayer, we find ourselves here. In hope, in prayer, we're right here, and we rise. Humbly hearted, rise. Won't be divided, rise. With Spirit to guide us, rise. In hope, in prayer, we find ourselves here. In hope, in prayer, we're right here. In hope, in prayer, we find ourselves here. In hope, in prayer, we're right here.
Our second reading is Instructions on Not Giving Up by Ada Limon. More than the fuchsia funnels breaking out of the crabapple tree, more than the neighbor's almost obscene display of cherry limbs, shoving their cotton candy-colored blossoms to the slate sky of spring rains, it's the greening of the trees that really gets to me. When all the shock of white and taffy, the world's baubles and trinkets, leave, the pavement strewn with the confetti of aftermath, the leaves come, patient, plodding, a green skin growing over whatever winter did to us. A return to the strange idea of continuous living, despite the mess of us, the hurt, the empty. Fine then, I'll take it, the tree seems to say. A new slick leaf unfurling like a fist to an open palm. I'll take it all.
I have spent a lot of time this week feeling angry. And anger is an emotion that I think many of us can push down at times, try to move past or rationalize or understand on some level. But as we heard in the story earlier with our young folks, the too much monster has been active this week. And I believe that while there are some times where we banish the too much monster during our time together, and we lift up that which is worthy, sometimes part of worship is actually dealing with the too much monster. Sometimes that is actually what's worthy. Sometimes the too much is worth dealing with because it doesn't always fade away if we try to ignore it. And there have been too many good reasons to be angry. We have just experienced yet another school shooting in which young children have been killed, as well as teachers. And so many of us know that these children could easily have been our own. Or maybe we are teachers, knowing what it is like to stand on the other side of that locked door, praying. And yet still, our politicians value money over human lives. It is sickening, stomach-turning, rage-inducing. We may feel helpless, like we have run out of resources to protect those that are most precious to us. And these same folks who would have us believe that they care for children seem hell-bent on passing legislation that makes it impossible for some of our youth and young adults to exist in their gender, legislation that will have a cost paid in human lives. There is so much to be angry about, and it can feel as if we are drowning in an ocean of wrongdoing, for only an ocean would be big enough to hold our sadness and our rage. Poet Marge Piercy has words on this in her poem, A Just Anger. She writes, "Anger shines through me. I am a burning bush. My rage is a cloud of flame in which I walk, seeking justice like a precipice. How the streets of the Iron City flicker and the dirty air fumes. Anger storms between me and things, transfiguring. A good anger acted upon is beautiful as lightning and swift with power. A good anger swallowed clots the blood to slime." Piercy reminds us that we cannot hide away our anger, for it is part of our capacity for humanness, for noticing when something is wrong with the world. And if we didn't feel that, would we really even be paying attention? Sometimes it is our anger more than hope, more than empathy, more than understanding, and more than anything else that can propel us toward justice. Robert Augustus Masters writes in his work, Spiritual Bypassing, when spirituality disconnects us from what really matters. He says, the primary emotional state that functions to uphold boundaries is anger. And this can be problematic for those who view anger as merely a negative state. This view is kind of common in Buddhism, which generally conceives anger as no more than an afflictive or unwholesome state, sometimes confusing it with aggression. Classic Buddhist texts generally take a very negative view of anger, not seeing value in it other than something to transform into compassion. And much of contemporary westernized Buddhism can follow suit, with the notable exception of teachers like Jack Kornfield and other psychotherapists who are Buddhists, not bothering to distinguish anger from aggression, confusing anger with what is actually done in anger, and advocating that practitioners not openly express it, all while failing to see that compassion and openly expressed anger can coexist. And so Thich Nhat Hanh goes on to show us that anger is actually something that requires tending. He says, anger is like a howling baby, suffering and crying. The baby needs a parent to embrace him. You are the parent for your baby, your anger. The moment you begin to practice breathing mindfully in and out, you have the energy of a parent to cradle and embrace the baby. Just embracing your anger, just breathing in and breathing out, that is good enough. The baby will feel relief right away. And so we begin to tell the Passover story. And the anger that I have felt, and that I think many of us are experiencing, now reminds me of Moses' anger and unlikely leadership in the Passover story. The story of the Israelites and the Egyptians in Exodus begins with a new Pharaoh coming into power who fears the Israelites, who are starting to outnumber the Egyptians. And the new ruler makes a plan to enslave them and force them to do hard labor, like making bricks and working in the fields. We may know the story, many of us, of Moses the baby being pulled out of the waters of the Nile by the Pharaoh's daughter and raised in the Pharaoh's house. But as Moses becomes an adult, he goes out into the land. and sees all of the injustice that is going on. And in his own act of violence, Moses, when he goes out into the land, kills an Egyptian, an overseer who is in the process of deeply hurting an Israelite. Afraid that Pharaoh would kill him in return, Moses ran away to a different land, the land of Midian. And it is there that Moses married the daughter of a Midianite priest and had a son with her. And time passed. The Pharaoh died, his son took the throne, and the Israelites cried out to their God, the God who had promised to be faithful to their ancestors, Abraham and Sarah, Isaac, Rebekah, Jacob, Leah, and Rachel. And one day, as we heard earlier, while Moses was watching his father-in-law's sheep in Midian, he sees a bush that is on fire but doesn't burn. And the story takes a critical turn when Moses goes to actually investigate instead of turning away. The universe tries all sorts of ways to get our attention, to break through what can feel like the fog of daily life. But if we aren't paying attention to all those signs, they may go unnoticed, unattended. In the words of the Reverend Carl Gregg, we miss at least half the picture if we read the Bible as only about miraculous events that happened thousands of years ago. He says, in contrast, each autumn I am more convinced that every bush is a burning bush. God is in, with, and beyond all things, a perspective known as panentheism. And God is always speaking to us if we will slow down enough to listen. So I go back to the quote from Exodus, "The place on which you are standing is holy ground." The place on which each of us is existing is holy ground. And so the Passover story continues. God called Moses' name from the bush and told him that God would save the Israelites, would remove them from Egypt into a different land. And it was Moses' job to tell Pharaoh, for God, to let my people go. And God would then deliver them. But what is not often remembered in the story is that Moses was afraid. He had a speech disorder. He was afraid to be the one to speak up on behalf of his people. And Moses begged God, "Can't you send someone else? Please send anyone else." But God would help Moses to speak. Moses returned to Egypt and had to perform lots of miracles so that people would believe that he was a leader sent by God. And we probably know the rest of the story with Moses and the Israelites' powerful words to Pharaoh, "Let my people go." The poet Naira Waheed shared this poem in her book, Salt. She writes, "No might make them angry, but it will make you free. If no one has ever told you, your freedom is more important than their anger. Your freedom is more important than their anger." And the story goes on to include Pharaoh's refusal and the plagues of frogs and locusts and many days of darkness and dead livestock, and still the refusal. We know about the death of all of the firstborns, except for the ones who did what God told them to do, and about the Israelites following pillars of cloud and fire out of Egypt, all the way to the sea. The Pharaoh and the Egyptians chased them to the edge of the sea, but we have God parting the waters for the Israelites to walk through to the other side. And as the Egyptians began to chase after them, still God brought the sea back together and the Egyptians drowned. Now, I can understand all sorts of reasons that this story might be hard to hear. There is so much violence and death on both sides, and it seems like God is a vengeful, hate-filled God. And you can see it that way if you'd like to, I understand. But I've been playing with this quote for a few weeks now by Valerie Kaur. She says, "The aim of divine rage is not vengeance, but to reorder the worlds." To reorder the worlds. In other words, God's plagues and the closing of the waters is not about getting revenge on the Egyptians for what they've done, but showing humans, hey, can you guys stop enslaving each other? Can you stop killing each other? Can you stop hating each other? Can you stop trying to make it harder for each other to live? That wasn't part of my plan for this planet. This is not how the world should be. So when we hear this story of God parting the waters, I'm reminded of what a classmate shared with me a few years ago about the image of God as mother, parting the waters, opening, making way for new life for this group of people who are so sick and tired of being beaten down and controlled. We see this kind of story time and time again throughout history of one group controlling another, one group doing violence against another out of fear or hatred. And unfortunately, the idea of reordering the world is still present now, is still an idea that we really need to hear, because our world needs reordering. And that story is not unique to the Jewish people, of course. We know that America was built on, financially and otherwise, enslaving Black and brown people, stealing from and murdering indigenous people, and that legacy will always be a part of the ground on which we stand, a part of the institutions we must navigate. And all of us, regardless of the identities we hold, are in need right now of a liberation story, in need of being freed from one group hating another, from the idea that some folks don't deserve to make decisions about their bodies or their health care, from the idea that people being who they are is somehow threatening. Though our plagues may be different than frogs and locusts, we are certainly not immune to the plagues of our times. We are still living in a time of plague, in an economic system that continues to value profit over humanity. It feels like we are stuck in this loop, and we aren't able to step out of it. That doesn't mean that life doesn't contain unimaginable beauty and joy, but it can feel harder to protect that beauty and to protect that joy from all of these things that feel determined to steal it away. As we heard in the poem earlier by Ada Limon, patient, plodding, a green skin, growing over whatever winter did to us, a return to the strange idea of continuous living, despite the mess of us, the hurt, the empty. Fine then, I'll take it, the tree seems to say, a new slick leaf unfurling like a fist to an open palm. I'll take it all. We learn eventually, painfully, to take it all. The Passover story is about survival, resilience, an unlikely leader having the courage to say no. It is about remembering where you have come from, even though you might not know where you're going or what lies on the other side of the parted waters. And in the story, we have God appearing in an unlikely way, getting Moses' attention, scaring him half to death, and really coaching him to be this leader that he doesn't want to be. He even begs God, can you send someone else? This is such a common story of calling that it has become familiar. We heard it in the story of Dr. King sitting at his kitchen table, wanting to find a way to quit, saying, I cannot do this. Dr. Cornel West has said, empathy is not simply a matter of trying to imagine what others are going through, but having the will to muster enough courage to do something about it. In a way, empathy is predicated upon hope, and it takes courage. I'll read the quote again from earlier. The aim of divine rage is not vengeance, but to reorder the world. And what if the aim of our rage, too, is to reorder the world? It is not just about God making the way, but about people, all of us making a way out of no way, about trusting each other, listening to each other. I like to believe and want to believe and need to believe that there is a force in the universe, by whatever name we know it, that recognizes injustice, that hears the cries of the people, that sees us in this plague and is with us as we try to get to the other side. Because we are trying to get there. And I know that folks here from Horizon have been down in Austin with Texas UU Justice Ministry, raising your voices, responding to hate, singing with joy, and refusing to stop. And maybe this is how we use our anger and our frustration. We let it give us energy. We let it propel us. We let it drive us for a different kind of world. Even though, like Moses, our voice may not be what we want it to be, we never have to speak alone. Look around. There will always be people willing to speak with you, willing to cross the narrow place with you into the land of the unknown. And maybe this is what the tiny seeds of liberation look like. May it be so. Amen. I invite you now to rise, either in body or in spirit, and join together in singing our closing hymn, We Are a Gentle, Angry People.
We are all in this together.
We extinguish this flame, but not our commitment to welcome radically, love boldly, grow spiritually, and serve courageously. This we do because we envision a loving community filled with compassion, helping all to thrive in a just world.
Folks, I invite you to join hands as you're comfortable. My prayer for you as we go forth from our time together this morning is that you let anger propel you towards a posture of not giving up, so that we may plant the seeds of liberation in our midst. Go in peace.